First, I'm just gonna remove the brake caliper, which is a 14 millimeter bolt. And if you can't get it, if this were to spin the pin, you can put a 17 millimeter on this side. And there's just 2 bolts holding this on. Just pull the caliper off and set it up on your suspension arm thing up there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pull the caliper bracket off. And again, this is just another 14 millimeter. And you might need a breaker bar for these depending on how tight they are, or if whoever did your brakes last has put any anti-seize or anything on them. And then you should be able to pull this off. If you can't, you can just take a screwdriver and separate your brake pad a little bit. I'm just going to remove my metal brackets because the new brakes came with fresh ones. And then make sure your pins are moving good. If not, you'll have to pull the rubber off and lube them up good, but mine seem to be moving nicely. I'm just gonna clean a little bit of the rust off of the groove here. And then to remove your, actually this one's coming off pretty easy, but what you would do to remove your rotor is put this jacking screw in right here, and you can just tighten it and it will jack the rotor right off. Otherwise they could get really stuck. But here, I'll just, since mine's relatively free, I'm just going to pull it off. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of anti-seize around the hub here. And you're going to have to steal this little rubber piece here out of your old rotor. Put in your new rotor. And I'll put a link to these rotors in the description. I got these off Amazon. I believe they're Wagner brand. And they're only about $25. They're either Wagner or AC Delco. So I'm just going to put my rotor back on. Make sure it's seated relatively well. I've got this brake lubricant that you just get at the Advanced Auto. And I'm just going to wipe some in these little grooves here, just so they don't rust up as bad. And then I'm going to put my new little shims in. And the cutaway of these goes towards the inside, just so it can clear the rotor. And my pads, I'm just going to check and see how tight they fit in there. Usually I have to file these off a little bit. And they're not bad, but don't want them to get stuck. So I'm just going to file the rough edges off in this area where it's going to be doing the sliding. And then I'm going to lubricate this area up good where it'll be sliding. Make sure you use brake lube, so you don't really want other types of greases on your actual brakes. And then you can see the curve here, so just make sure you follow that curve and put these on the right way. I'm going to put these on before I put the bracket in the car, because it's a little easier to see what you're doing. And just make sure they slide relatively good and they're just not binding up. And then I'm going to throw some lubricant on the back side here to just so they don't squeak. And then throw my caliper bracket back on. Basically just doing the same steps but in reverse. Snug it up real good. If you're not used to this, you should probably torque it with a torque wrench. And I'm just gonna pinch in my brake pads so they're touching the rotor. Now I've just got to push in my piston. You can kind of push it with your fingers, but it's a lot easier to clamp this in. So I've just got a big C-clamp. This clamp's way overkill. Just putting one side against the piston and one side against this fitting. And I've opened my brake reservoir under the hood, so it just goes right in really easy. And now you can put that back on. Throw your 2 bolts on for that. And now you just got to throw your wheel back on.